And the last, but not least of this session is Katerina Tsangaris of the Hellenic Center of Marine Research, I believe from the National Marine Park of Zakynthos.
So, lastly, our results on the National Marine Park of Zakynthos. So, our results on the National Marine Park of Zakynthos, which is the smallest MPA we studied in Plastic Busters project. I have to point out first that this is a joint effort between HCMR and the National Marine Park of Zakynthos Management Authority. We worked together on this, several scientists from HCMR and MPA managers. The park is located in the southern part of Zakynthos Island in the Eastern Ionian Sea. Priority species include sea turtles, monk seals, seabirds, cetaceans. There are also Posidonia beds and other important habitats. The area is very important in the Mediterranean as a nesting area for the sea turtle Caretta caretta. And however, there is also in the other MPAs that were presented earlier, there is a very high pressure from tourism, even on the nesting beaches, which are very popular. And in the whole Zakynthos Island, it is estimated that about 1 million tourists visit the area every year. So we implemented the Plastic Busters MPAs monitoring protocols that were described earlier within the marine park and in the eastern part of the Zakynthos Island. That is the most touristic area of the island. And sorry, the map is not looking very good there because these are the sites we sampled. We sampled litter on the beaches, the sea surface, the sea floor, as well as litter ingestion in commercial species, and also that we sampled at the same areas following the protocol of the Plastic Busters project, and also in endangered species. The macroliter densities were high, as in the other areas, were higher than the EU baseline threshold value, and they were also higher than the baseline value for Central Mediterranean and Ionian Sea. And the litter densities did not seem to be related to proximity to sources because they were high both at the remote areas, even both within and outside of the MPA. We found highest densities in the remote beaches. Most litter items were plastic, and 23% was single-use plastic. Top 10 items on the MPA beaches included plastic cups, lids, straws and stirrers, items coming from tourism recreational activities, as well as stinging cords and items coming from fishing activities. These are the results in the MPA, but results in the beaches outside of the MPA are similar. We also sampled beach microliter. Microliter types were mostly fibers. The most commonly type found was fibers, followed by fragments, and they were mostly of polyethylene and polypropylene. Microliter densities were overall lower within the MPA, and this could relate to the protective measures that are applied there. Again, most of microliter was plastic, 60% was single-use plastic, And we could identify, within the MPA, we could identify 10 types of, 10 top 10, not 10, sorry, 8 top litter items. It is not easy to recognize the items when they are floating, as Christina also pointed out earlier. And among these, there were synthetic ropes and fish boxes coming from fishing activities, and cans or food wrappers coming from recreational activities. Floating micro litter was overall very variable, but the highest values, the highest densities were found in the port of Zakynthos outside the park, and the lowest values were found in the park. So the floating microliter densities could relate to proximity to sources. Most microliter items were fragments, and followed by filaments, and most of the items were of polyethylene. Seafloor microliter was sampled during a cleaning campaign by divers within the MPA, and seafloor microliter items were some of them, a high percentage of them were non-plastic. About half of the litter items were not plastic. But still, plastics were quite high percentage of the total items, and single-use plastics were about 23% of the total items. And again, the top 10 items included items coming from from recreational activities and fishing activities. Microliter, we also sampled microliter on the seafloor. Again, as floating microliter, highest densities were found outside the Zakynthos park, in the port of Zakynthos, and lowest densities within the park. So again, there might be a relation there to proximity to sources. Microliter items were mostly fibers, followed by fragments, as for beach microliter items, and most of them were of polyethylene, rather a high percentage of them was polyethylene and polypropylene. So using as I said before, we use the macro litter items to identify marine litter sources in the National Marine Park of Zakynthos. These are the results for the sites in the park, but they are similar with the results from sites outside of the park. And excluding the non-sourced items, the items that we will not be able to identify a specific source for, we found that microliter comes predominantly from shoreline tourism and recreational activities and fisheries and aquaculture activities. So these are the results we use to plan mitigation actions. And our recommendations on measures are to target mitigation actions towards promoting best practices for tourism and recreation, promoting the replacement of single-use plastics, as we had quite a high number of single-use plastics in all environmental compartments, and also promoting derelict fishing gear management schemes, as many items came from possibly lost fishing gear. Moving to microplastic ingestion, we investigated several species for microplastic ingestion, like mussels, sea urchins, several commercial fish species, red-side mullet, bogs, pickerel, hake. Some of them were were also investigated in the other 3 in the other MPAs of the Plastic Busters project. We found microplastic in all the species we examined, both within the park and outside of the park. Usually between 20% to 50% of the animals we investigated had microplastics in their guts, and up to 3 items per individual, and this was dependent on the species. So microplastics, microplastic items per individual, considering all the individuals we measured in all species, were less than 0.5 items per individual. We also applied the threefold monitoring approach that Christina described earlier, to assess if the ingested microplastics were causing microplastic adverse effects on the animals, using biomarkers and chemical analysis of plastic additives. We used 3 species for the threefold monitoring approach: Mullus, Urmuletus, Mytilus, and sea urchins. But although the chemical analysis that performed by UNIC showed plastic additives in the tissues of these animals, biomarker results did not indicate significant adverse effects in the animals. And possibly this is related to the low levels of microplastics we found in the animals. As already said, up to 3 items per individual. As regards endangered species, we detected microplastics in feces of monk seals as a means of assessing microplastic ingestion in these species. And this work was done in collaboration with Archipelagos Environment and Development, who collected the samples. And we found microliter in all the feces samples we tested, showing that monk seals are also at risk from microplastic ingestion. As regards sea turtles, we examined the stomach of stranded sea turtles that were found on the beaches of Zakynthos, and we found litter was ingested litter in 1 out of 6 turtles we examined, and most of plastic litter ingested was polyethylene. So to give an overview of the marine litter status in Zakynthos Island, beach macrolitter far exceeds the EU threshold level, so the beaches in Zakynthos are far from achieving a good environmental status. There are no EU thresholds for the other environmental compartments, but our results are comparable to reported values in Greek and Mediterranean waters. Floating microlitter is higher than reported values, while microlitter ingestion and litter ingestion is in the low range of reported values in Greek and Mediterranean waters. So what we learned from this, the implementation of the Plastic Busters protocols provided us with new knowledge on the amount, composition, and sources of marine litter in the Zakynthos Park and Zakynthos Island, and on the amount of microlitter ingested by animals in the area, and enabled us to investigate the potential impacts on the health. The collaboration between scientists and MPAs managers was essential to implement this pilot monitoring in the MPA. And the project increased the carrying capacity of the MPA Management Authority in terms of know-how, manpower, equipment use. We believe that replicability is feasible through the joint efforts of MPA managers and scientists, and our outputs can be transferred to MPA management design and mitigation actions. So I don't have a photograph of our team, because we are almost all here. Then just this is an artistic attempt of our team. It's a mermaid made of beach litter, just to show you that beach litter sampling can be fun. And maybe we can use art for raising awareness on the marine litter issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for these very interesting results. And this brings us to the end of this session. I'm not going to attempt any conclusion here. The only thing that I would like to say is that definitely this project produced a bulk of data. We have not resolved all issues and questions for sure. The synthesis is going to be done after the coffee break and the conclusions. So don't leave. We need everybody here to understand. We are going to have a photograph now during the coffee break, but you come back in a quarter of an hour. That is in 3:30. 3:30 are 13 minutes, but never mind. And we have, after the short session, we have the documentary and the signing of the memorandum of understanding, the high level segment. So I hope that you will enjoy, because all the sessions from now on are I think very, very interesting for all of us. Thanks a lot.